Professor Lumumba's urgent warning. Zambia on the brink of division? Mundubile meeting exposed. Two powerful voices just met. One a respected Pan-African intellectual, the other a rising political force in Zambia. And what followed was a warning that no Zambian can afford to ignore. After meeting Brian Mundubile, Professor PLO Lumumba issued a strong caution about Zambia's political climate. A warning about division, polarization, and the dangerous path that many nations on the continent have taken before. Why did Lumumba feel compelled to speak out now? What did he see, or hear, that made him raise the alarm? And what does this mean for Zambia as tensions rise ahead of 2026? Tonight, we break down the meeting, the message, and the hidden implications behind Lumumba's words. Good day, viewers. Welcome to another edition of the InspirAfrica official. I'm Nakash. It's been quite a week here in Southern Africa, hasn't it? We've been following some extraordinary developments across the continent, and today we bring you a story that might very well define Zambia's political future for the next decade. Yesterday afternoon, in a meeting that has sent shockwaves through Zambian political circles, renowned Pan-Africanist Professor Patrick Lumumba sat down with opposition figure Brian Mundubile. But this wasn't just another courtesy call. This was a warning. Picture this. A nation once hailed as the beacon of democratic stability in southern Africa, now standing at a precipice. A country that has never known civil war, never descended into ethnic violence, never torn itself apart at the seams. Now being warned by one of Africa's most respected voices that it could be slipping toward division. How did we get here? What drives a man who was once declared a security threat and deported from Zambia to return and issue such an urgent warning? Is the constitution-making process really being forced upon unwilling citizens? Are the mounting frustrations among Zambian youth truly a powder keg waiting for a single spark? And perhaps most troubling of all, has the ruling UPND government lost touch with the very people who swept them into power with such hope just 4 years ago? What happens when a constitution is created not by the people, but against their will? What happens when the impatience of youth meets the indifference of leadership? What happens when peace, decades of hard-won peace, becomes something we take for granted until it's too late? These aren't hypothetical questions, viewers. According to Professor Lumumba, these are the questions Zambia must answer right now, before the point of no return. The revelation came to light on the afternoon of November 18, 2025, when Professor Patrick Lumumba made what BMM Media described as a brief but powerful courtesy call to Patriotic Front presidential candidate and Porokoso Member of Parliament, Honorable Brian Mundubile. To understand the significance of this meeting, we need to step back. This isn't the first time Professor Lumumba has made headlines in Zambia. Back in September 2018, at the height of the Edgar Lungu administration, Lumumba was denied entry at Kenneth Kaunda International Airport and deported back to Kenya. The government, through then Information Minister Dora Salia, cited security considerations. He had been scheduled to deliver a lecture titled Africa in the Age of China Influence and Global Geodynamics at Eden University. 4 years, that deportation stood as a symbol of the previous government's intolerance for critical voices. The irony wasn't lost on political observers then, and it isn't lost now, that the man once deemed too dangerous to enter Zambia was now sitting down with opposition leaders, offering counsel on the nation's future. Fast forward to 2025. Zambia finds itself in the midst of a constitutional crisis. In March 2025, the UPND government released proposed constitutional amendments, Bill No. 7 of 2025. The controversy exploded immediately. Opposition parties, civil society organizations, the Law Association of Zambia, and even the 3 mother church bodies, the Council of Churches in Zambia, the Zambia Conference of Catholic Bishops, and the Evangelical Fellowship of Zambia, all rejected the process. The proposed amendments would increase the number of members of parliament from 156 to 211, introduce elements of proportional representation, and critically, change the provision limiting presidential appointments to parliament from a fixed 8 MPs to an unlimited number determined by ordinary legislation. Critics call it a power grab. The government calls it inclusive democracy. By June 2025, the Constitutional Court found the government had failed to meet constitutional requirements for public participation. The court recommended restarting the process with wider consultation. President Hichilema announced a pause, but in October 2025, Just 3 months before the year's end and 8 months before the scheduled 2026 elections, he appointed a 25-member technical committee dominated by UPND members to revisit the rejected bill. It was into this cauldron of constitutional controversy, political polarization, and mounting public frustration that Professor Lumumba arrived. And what he had to say would crystallize the fears many Zambians have been harboring. According to the BMM media report, the meeting covered several critical areas. Honorable Mundubile began by laying out the opposition's concerns. The report states that Honorable Mundubile shared the mounting challenges facing the Zambian opposition, particularly the tensions surrounding the ongoing constitution-making process being pushed by the UPND government. He expressed concern that the process is moving ahead without broad national consensus, warning that constitutions created against the peoples will rarely stand the test of time. That phrase, "constitutions created against the peoples will rarely stand the test of time," speaks to a fundamental principle of democratic governance. But it was Professor Lumumba's response that has captured the nation's attention. Professor Lumumba, known across Africa for his principled clarity on governance and democracy, urged Zambians to safeguard the peace and unity the nation has enjoyed for decades. Now, viewers, let's pause here. When a man of Lumumba's stature, a man who has advised governments across the continent, who has witnessed democratic backsliding in multiple African nations, when such a man uses the phrase, "safeguard the peace," it's not casual conversation. It's a warning rooted in observation and pattern recognition. The report goes further. The professor also issued a sober warning about the rising frustration among the youth. He noted that impatience, economic stress, and declining trust in institutions can become a dangerous combination if not addressed with honesty and urgency. Let those words sink in. Impatience, economic stress, declining trust. A dangerous combination. Without proper leadership, he cautioned, these pressures could push the country toward long-term instability. The joint statement from the meeting concluded. Both leaders agreed on the need for political maturity, national dialogue, and a constitutional process that reflects the hopes of all citizens, not the ambitions of a few. Their conversation offered a reminder that Zambia's stability is not automatic. It must be protected by strong institutions and leaders committed to the nation's collective good. The response to this meeting has been polarized, to say the least. UPND supporters have questioned why Lumumba would meet with Mundubile, accusing the PF of trying to return to the days of violence. One commenter wrote, "Bringing back PF to power is the one which can make Zambia slip into division. At the moment, the country is peaceful and united. How many killings has Lumumba heard under UPND?" Others defended the meeting, pointing to the legitimacy of opposition concerns. Another commenter noted, "Mundubile is not Zambia and is not possible to get the correct picture of Zambia's political picture from him." But here's what cannot be disputed. Professor Lumumba chose to deliver this message. A man who once faced deportation from this very country, who has no electoral ambitions in Zambia, who gains nothing from political partisanship, he chose to issue a warning. The question isn't whether we agree with every word. The question is whether we're listening. So what does this all mean for Zambia? Let's examine the broader context and the various perspectives at play. First, the economic dimension. Mundubile and other opposition figures have pointed to rising poverty levels, persistent load shedding, and the highest cost of living in Zambia's history. In rural areas like Mporokoso and Kasama, poverty rates hover around 76%. Youth unemployment remains stubbornly high. These aren't just statistics, they're the lived reality of millions of Zambians. Second, the constitutional question. Civil society leaders like Laura Mitty and Linda Kasanda have warned that the proposed changes could enable the government to guarantee itself a majority in the 2026 elections. The addition of 55 new constituency-based MPs, potentially concentrated in UPND strongholds, combined with the government's refusal to release the boundary delimitation report, has fueled suspicions of gerrymandering. State Counsel Chifyumu Banda argues the timeline makes credible consultation impossible. Parliament will be dissolved in May 2026 to pave way for elections in August 2026. The technical committee has been appointed on October 2, 2025, less than 3 months before the end of the year. Previous constitutional processes, like the Justice Anel Silingui Commission in 2011, took several months and involved district, provincial, and national consultations. This process is expected to unfold in a fraction of that time, with limited budgetary support. The government's perspective, articulated by UPND Media Director Mark Simue, is that delimitation is a statutory requirement mandated by law, not a political choice. The government argues the amendments aim to enhance inclusive governance by creating reserved seats for women, youth, and persons with disabilities. They maintain the controversial 50% plus one provision for presidential elections remains intact. But here's the uncomfortable truth that Professor Lumumba's warning touches on. Zambia has seen this movie before. Every Zambian president over the past 3 decades has amended the constitution as elections approached. From Frederick Chiluba's attempt at a third term, to the constitutional wrangling under Rupia Banda, to Edgar Lungu's controversial Bill 10, each time, the changes were framed as necessary for democracy while critics saw political manipulation. Across the continent, Professor Lumumba has witnessed what happens when constitutional processes become weapons of incumbency rather than tools of democratic consolidation. From Uganda's removal of presidential age limits to the manipulation of electoral systems in various countries, the pattern is familiar. Small changes here, procedural adjustments there, until suddenly the democratic space has narrowed and opposition becomes nearly impossible. The warning about frustrated youth cannot be overstated. Africa has the youngest population of any continent. In Zambia, as across the region, young people are educated, connected, aware of global opportunities, and increasingly locked out of their own economies. When Lumumba speaks of impatience, economic stress, and declining trust, he's describing a demographic time bomb that has destabilized nations from Tunisia to Sudan. There's also the matter of institutional integrity. The Patriotic Front itself is in crisis, with competing factions led by Given Labinda and Robert Shabinga literally fighting over control of the party secretariat. UPND youth recently stormed PF offices, causing injuries and property damage, while police stood by. Courts issue contradictory orders. The Electoral Commission of Zambia faces accusations of bias from opposition MPs who claim voter registration is being suppressed in non-UPND areas. A joint statement by opposition parties and civil society in March 2025 captured the stakes. If there is one thing the Zambian people have always rallied round is to jointly fight and oppose attempts at constitutional manipulation as is being attempted now. It is clear that President Hakainde is engaging in serial deceit as he tries to molest our constitution and good governance. He must be stopped. To be fair, the UPND would argue they're trying to correct historical exclusions and strengthen democratic participation. They point to the fact that women, youth, and persons with disabilities remain underrepresented in Zambian politics. Some progressive organizations support the amendments specifically for these provisions. But here's the central dilemma. Even well-intentioned reforms can be poisoned by the perception of bad faith. Even necessary changes can fail if they're imposed rather than embraced. And even legitimate concerns about representation can be weaponized if the process itself lacks integrity. This is precisely what Professor Lumumba appears to be warning against. Not the substance of any particular reform, but the dangerous erosion of trust, consensus, and national cohesion that occurs when major constitutional changes are pushed through without genuine buy-in from the people they're meant to serve. Viewers, as we close this edition, I want to thank you for staying with us through this important story. What we're witnessing in Zambia right now is more than just a political dispute. It's a test of democratic maturity. It's a question of whether a nation can have difficult conversations without descending into division. It's about whether institutions can hold, whether leaders can listen, and whether citizens can demand better without the whole system fracturing. Professor Lumumba's warning isn't about any single political party. It's about the fragility of peace, the danger of taking stability for granted, and the responsibility that falls on every person who loves their country, leaders and citizens alike, to protect what has been built over decades. So here's what I want to ask you. What do you think? Are these warnings justified, or are they overblown? Is the constitutional process legitimate consultation or political manipulation? How can Zambia navigate these tensions without sacrificing either stability or democratic progress? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's have a real conversation about this. Zambians, Southern Africans, anyone following these developments, your perspective matters. And if this kind of in-depth coverage is valuable to you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We'll continue bringing you these stories, these perspectives, and these critical conversations about Africa's political future. I'm Nakash, and I'll be back with you tomorrow with more stories, more analysis, and more truth about the continent we love. Until then, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay hopeful.